Thanks, Jason. Really appreciate everybody being here, and really love that talk that Jason, because it's going to lead into so many of the things that I'm going to talk about the data revolution. And it's something that, as he said, it's transforming things, it's disrupting things, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the history of that transformation. And so I first want to start with just a little bit of background from myself. So I actually was born in Chicago. My folks moved down to Tampa in 1960, very early on. And I got my degree from the University of South Florida. I got a theoretical computer science degree that concentrated on pattern recognition. Got my PhD in math and probability and statistics. And worked for Martin Marietta. And doing all sorts of work in predictive analytics. And I've been in the Southern Illinois system for almost 30 years now, in the Carbondale campus and Edwardsville campus. And so it's been a great career, and it's all been focused on predictive analytics and the things I'm going to talk about today. But I want to talk about really my hero, and my hero is my father. My folks were actually children of the Depression, born in 1920. And neither of them actually even graduated from high school. So I'm a first-generation college student. And my dad, when he was in the Navy during the Second World War, came up with a welding technique that was revolutionary at the time. Came back to Chicago after the Second World War and met someone who was involved in business in the Chicago area. And they started a business together called Sherway Industries. And eventually decided that the business climate in Tampa, in Florida, was something that they wanted to get involved in. They moved down there. Now, their Sherway Industries is their catchphrase was, "We can fix anything but a broken heart." And but my dad was someone who just the hardest work. He's my hero, hardest worker I've ever met. And did things so that he was going to be a part of the business community in Tampa. And I grew up in that environment. And one of the things he did was he expanded Sherway Industries into a lot of different areas. Now, I don't know, is there anybody here who is in sort of heavy industry, welding? Any welders in the room? Any folks who do welding? Okay, probably not. But in the 1970s, I don't know how many people remember that there was a huge steel crisis in the country. There was a big steel shortage in the country, and my dad was in heavy industry, did welding, and started a welding supply company just before the steel crisis hit. And it was something that I remember sitting around listening to him at the dinner table about how worried he was about the business climate at the time. Because his industry, his company, had all sorts of things that the steel industry affected. And he would sit around and say, where am I going to get these welding rods? Where am I going to get my welding rod that I need to move forward? Well, how many people remember the Sears Roebuck catalog? How many people remember the Sears Roebuck catalog? Now I'm, born in Chicago, grew up, my folks, lived in Chicago for most of their lives, still have family in Chicago. And the Sears Roebuck catalog would come both in the spring and the fall, and it was about 4 inches thick. Do you remember that? It would come in 4 inches thick. And my mom literally would memorize that thing. I mean, she knew every 1,500 pages of that Sears Roebuck catalog. And I remember, this is an absolutely true story. So my dad had an office in the home, and it was a corporate, incorporation. My dad was the president, my mom was the secretary treasurer. As a family business, and so they were sitting in the office together, and my dad was on the phone with one of his business pals, and he was just kvetching about all the stuff that was going on with the steel crisis, and he can't find any welding rod. It's just not around. And my mom is leafing through this Sears Roebuck catalog. And he's talking about the type of welding rod. Again, there's no welders in the room, but 7018 is a type of welding rod. It's a basic steel welding rod. And it's just, there wasn't any in the industry. My mom's turning the pages of that catalog as my dad is talking. And she's going, "You need welding rod?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "What was that number you said, 7018? I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, it's right here in the Sears Roebuck catalog." And he goes, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Yeah, so Sears Roebuck sells welding rod." And he goes, "Oh my God, how much do they have?" And she goes, "I don't know, but I'll find out." Well, it turns out Sears Roebuck had tons, literally tons of welding rods stored somewhere in the country. Now, if a housewife from Tampa started buying tons of welding rod, because this was supposed to be not for resale, right? So now, I think we're far enough away from this so I could be honest about what happened. But they basically, they basically kind of set up some shell. Well, anyway, let's just say that suddenly lots of welding rod was being bought from Sears and shipped to Tampa to a particular address. And nobody ever caught on, but anyway, it saves my dad's company. It really did. I mean, the fact that my mom knew that Sears Roebuck catalog backwards and forward and found that welding rod. Now, the question is this: why didn't Sears become Amazon? Why didn't Sears become Amazon? They were Amazon before Amazon. That Sears Roebuck catalog had everything, including welding rod. And they had a shipping apparatus that could ship all over the country. So I just want you to think about that. Why didn't Sears become Amazon? Because this is what I'm talking about. The event that I'm talking about is in the late 70s. And that Sears Roebuck catalog was the Amazon website of the time. And yet, right now, if tomorrow morning you woke up in the Wall Street Journal and it said that Sears Roebuck was going out of business, declaring bankruptcy, how many people in this room would be surprised? Probably not a single one. So something happened, but Sears Roebuck wasn't there. And so, again, this is part of my growing up, and I just want to talk about this a little bit. So in 1980, my dad, Sherway Industries, was one of the biggest heavy industry companies in the Tampa area. My dad had all sorts of employees working for him, had all sorts of business going on, and then something happened. The computer age hit. And the computer age brought with it CNC machines, computer numerical control. And the lathes that, if you go back and look at that thing where my dad was welding and the lathes in that picture, those were basically World War II vintage lathes. And in the 1980s, these machines came out. Computer numerical control. And my dad had to make a decision. He had to make a decision, is he going to adapt or not? Well, a machine like that at the time cost about $200,000. And that was one machine was probably as much technology, the cost of that was probably as much technology as he had in his entire shop. And he had to decide, is he going to make a $200,000 investment and adapt? And he didn't. 10 years later, he had 2 employees working for him. And 3 years after that, he essentially was out of business. Now, fortunately, he had a long business career, very successful. He was actually, by that time, in his 70s. And it was kind of time for him to step down. So, my dad had a great career, great life, and like I said, was my hero. But adapt, transform, digital Darwinism, adapt or die. And everybody in this room is going to have to make that decision going forward. Okay, now I just want to talk a little bit about what I've done in my career, because it's going to lead to the next stage. Now, I started off, after I got my degrees, I started working for Martin Marietta Aerospace in what was called at that time the Smart Weapons Program. So what I did was predictive analytics and pattern recognition for the military, okay? Now, it was really important. So at the time when I was doing this work, I couldn't talk to my wife about what I was actually doing. And so I don't know if you remember at the time, but there was, everybody knew there were satellites up there taking pictures. But we actually could not, the US government never would verify that. They wouldn't actually acknowledge the fact that there were satellites taking pictures. Of course, now everybody knows that they actually acknowledge it, because it's like, we got Google Earth up there taking pictures, and so, it's silly not to acknowledge it anymore. But it's really important to see what happened with the pattern recognition and predictive analytics work in the military. And so we're going to talk about that right now. So we've got my Steve over there, and my tech is going to try to make this YouTube video work. How many people remember the movie Clear and Present Danger? Clear and Present Danger with Harrison Ford? And so let's play that video. Because smart weapons technology at the time was, we were trying to make it fully automatic. We were trying to make it so that there weren't any human beings in the loop. But if you remember this movie, it shows a particular type of smart weapons technology that was actually the state of the art around 1990. All right, so what you would have seen, okay? What you would have seen is I don't know if you remember the scene, but they actually parachute somebody into the forest there in Colombia, and he's got a laser that he paints a target with. So there's a target there, and he's got a laser. There's a human being on the ground. There's a fighter in the air, and the guy on the ground is actually painting the target with a laser. And the spectrum of that laser actually made the missile that could see that incredibly bright spot on the target. But there needed to be a human being in the loop for that missile to hit its target. We could never make, in the industry, we could never make the human outside the loop, because of the fact that the decisions that were needed had to be 100% accurate. They had to have accuracy that was beyond what we could do automatically. And so the human being could never get out of the loop. And so actually, after the Smart Weapons Program, we had a program called the Brilliant Weapons Program. So we went from smart weapons to brilliant weapons. And brilliant weapons were supposed to take that laser and move it to the level where there was no human in the loop at all. The missile could basically find its own target. That never happened either. And the problem is that school buses and armored personnel carriers look too much alike. And you don't want to make that mistake. And even if that mistake is only made 0.0001% of the time, that's still too much error. And so the next video that we're not going to be able to show is actually what current drone technology is. And so, again, the human being is still in the loop in the decision making. But now the human being is sitting in Colorado Springs in a computer just infested room with screens all over the place, and the drone is flying in Iraq. And the drone has incredible high-definition video that is being streamed back to the human operators in Colorado Springs. Once again, the human being is still in the loop on all the important decisions. That's important for what I'm about to show you, okay? So just imagine you saw those two videos for me, okay? All right, so we had the laser painting the target in clear and present danger, and we have computer screens, a guy sitting in Colorado Springs with a drone flying in Iraq. Because a lot of machine learning that happens these days, for the big companies, human beings are not in the loop. What's being done is you're handing data to some black box. And the only human decision is what data are you training on. So there's training and then testing. And so you collect a group of data that actually you train on, so that, in other words, you're saying, okay, well, this is the data that characterizes my business. And then you hand it over to a company who actually builds a neural network. Now, for those of you who have some mathematical background, every one of those edges in that network is a number. And those numbers are the thing that are doing the analysis. And the training set is actually building those numbers. But this is being done automatically. You hand them your data, or in some cases, they just gather the data for you. And they're building that neural net. But in fact, more and more people are realizing that the human being still needs to be in the loop. Now, this is from the MIT Sloan School of Business, which some of you may have heard of. And this is an article they published a couple years ago saying that we need humans in the loop. We still need human beings in the decision-making loop when you're doing data analytics. And part of that is because of human intuition. Now, there's things that are going to be automated. There's things that are going to be automated. But there are things that human beings do that we have never been able to duplicate in technology. And one of those things is intuition. The intuition that comes from expertise, from knowledge, from experience, that's ultimately the most valuable thing that you build. And that's something that we've never been able to automate, and that's something that is still critical in the decision-making loop. Now, I'm going to talk about something I did when I was chairman of the math department on the Carbondale campus. And so I'm a mathematician, okay? So I give a lot of talks to other mathematicians. And the warning is anytime you put a slide with numbers up, you lose half of your audience immediately, okay? So I'm going to try to, I'm just looking to see how many eyes are going to be glazing over as I go through this. I want some teaching awards in my career, so I don't, we'll see. Chancellor Pembroke, he's going to be grading me over here, so try to be good, okay? Don't fall asleep. No heads on the desk, okay? Because the chancellor's looking. So, all right. So what I did was I was trying to get my provost on the other campus came to me and he said, Greg, you need to increase the academic success of your students in your entry-level math courses. You've got to make those numbers better. And so I'd been in the business by that time for 25 years. And I used my intuition into the problem, and I said, okay, well, what are the key things? And all I did was concentrate on three things: a student's preparation, their motivation, and the demonstration that they've learned something. So those are the categories of things that I concentrated on. And I said, I can measure those things. I can measure how well they're prepared, because we can give them a test as they come in. I can measure how well they're motivated, because I can determine if they're doing their homework and they're going to class. And I can give them a test to demonstrate some knowledge at the end of the third week. So only three things, only three variables: preparation, motivation, and demonstration. And then I use my intuition to determine how important those three categories were. So I said, okay, 25% of the weight is going to go on preparation, 25% on motivation, 50% on them demonstrating some knowledge. And then on the basis of that, I'm going to come up with categories. Green, yellow, orange, red are going to be the warning levels of my students. Green is they're good. Yellow is they're struggling a little. Orange is they're struggling a lot. And red is, folks, gosh, I wish I could help you. Best wishes next semester. So those were the three categories, that the four categories, and the three categories I measured: preparation, motivation, demonstration. Now here's where I'm going to lose everybody, okay? But this is, that's all right, okay. So this is what's called a Markov model of the data. Because here's the thing, data isn't static. Data changes. And what I was interested in is not how the students were in week 3, whether or not they were in the green category and they were doing good, or the yellow category and they were starting to struggle, but how they changed over the semester. Did they stay green? Or did they move from yellow to green? Or worse, did they move from green to yellow or green to orange? And so those numbers, those coefficients there, are the probability, the percentage of students who stayed in that category from week 3 to week 8. So as you can see, I can't quite see the numbers over here. So 81% of the students that were in the green category at week 3 stayed green in week 8. In terms of the yellow students, 32% of the students who were yellow at week 3 moved to green in week 8. So those were those numbers. You turn those into percentages. And so we tracked the students through the course of the semester to see how they changed categories. Now, what was fascinating, when we looked from week 8 to the final grade, the students who were green at midterm, over 90% of them ended up being successful in the course. However, the students that were in the red category at midterm, again, the vast majority, over 90% of them ended up failing the course. So what did that tell me? I'm looking at these students as they transition across these categories, and it told me the key is get them green by midterm. Get them in that green category by week 8. And so we did a pilot where I did an actual intervention in the students. Now, here's the thing, and I'm going to come back to this because we're going to ask the question, what does this have to do with me? Because I'm not teaching students college algebra in your business. What does it have to do with me? Well, here's the thing that everybody who's in business has to deal with: scarcity of resources. You can't do everything. So you got to concentrate, you got to focus somewhere. And what we focused on were the yellow students. We said, we're going to focus, we're going to identify the students in the yellow category, and we're going to intervene with them. Extra tutoring. The teachers are going to provide some extra lessons for them. They're going to give emails encouraging them. They got a letter from me, a personal letter from me, the chairman, saying, you're doing okay, but if you just worked a little harder, we think you could be successful. So we did a series of interventions in the students at week 3 and moved the numbers. In one semester, we moved the numbers. So from there, we went from 32% who transitioned from yellow to green to over 42%. And that was the key. We did an intervention and we changed the behavior of those students. Now, we also looked at the overall in this pilot, and if we didn't actually retain the students in green, then it doesn't matter. If we got them to green by midterm and then they left, then we're not doing anything. But actually, in our pilot, they actually stayed. So in other words, students who were green at midterm actually stayed successful. All right? And so that was critical. So what did we do? We used predictive analytics to, first of all, determine the right categories and identify the students that are in the right categories. We then tracked, and this is really important, we then tracked them as they moved from category to category and understood the probability of them transitioning. In a markup model, that's called a state transition diagram, and we use that all the time in predictive analytics. So the key is we had categories and we understood how they related to each other and how to move somebody from one category to another. And over a 4-year period, we increased the success rate in our Gateway math courses from less than 50% to almost 70% using this kind of intervention and that kind of data analysis. Interestingly enough, the next year, in 2015, I got the job as Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at SIUE. Mostly, I think, on the basis of this work. So the idea is this. First of all, I was the expert. I had been in the business for over 2 decades, trying to teach mathematics to Gateway College students. I had the intuition into the problem. I was able to identify the key characteristics that were measurable. And I understood that the key was getting students to transition at the right time using the right intervention. And with that, I changed the success rate of those students. Now, what does this have to do with this? Okay, what does this have to do? Because you're not teaching college algebra to students. But what you do have are goals in your business. And you have intuition and expertise that are relevant to those goals. You have categories. Maybe instead of students being successful in college algebra, maybe it's transitioning okay customers into good customers. I don't know what the categories are. It depends on the goal. What is your goal for your business? But no matter what goal you have for your business, there are relevant categories that are critical to that goal. And with respect to those categories, there are transitions between those categories. How do you move someone who walks into your business once a week but doesn't really buy anything? How do you change that to somebody who's not only there but actually buying things? How do you change a good customer to a great customer? I don't know what the categories are because I'm not the expert in your business. You are. But no matter what business you are, no matter what business you have categories. You have categories that are critical to your business goals. So the moral of the story is that predictive analytics is here to stay. And your business expertise and intuition are critical to making the right decisions. They are absolutely critical to making the right decisions. And human beings, you, have to be in the loop of that. Now, we just started on campus the Center for Predictive Analytics. Now, I'm actually going to be stepping down as Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences this summer. And part of the reason I'm stepping down is because I'm excited about the potential for this center. Now, the Chancellor started something called the Innovation Fund a few years ago. And when I saw that, I realized that, first of all, there was an opportunity to create a center that was going to be focused on predictive analytics on the campus. And I actually put together a proposal. I asked some folks to give me support letters. In fact, the Mayor, Hal Patton, I appreciate the letter of support that you gave us when we started it. And that center was funded. And I was the chair of the search committee who hired our new director, and that's Dr. Carrie Butts-Willensmeyer. Carrie, you're here in the room somewhere. That's Carrie. So thank you so much. Give Carrie a round of applause. We were so pleased when she accepted our offer. She was a researcher at the University of Illinois doing biostatistics and predictive analytics, and the fact that she left the University of Illinois in a great position and came here to Edwardsville to be the director of our center, I think is a testimony to the potential here at SIUE and for the center. And Carrie, so I thank you for taking our offer and coming here. So Carrie is absolutely, she has hit the ground sprinting as the director. But I'm going to be stepping down as dean and working with the center as the business liaison. I'm kind of going full circle in my career. And I started off in industry doing predictive analytics for Martin Marietta Aerospace, and I'm going to come back to that now, doing business and predictive analytics. Now, everyone knows that we do have a great business analytics group in the School of Business, and Janice Joplin, where are you? So Janice here is our Associate Dean in the School of Business and is the point person for the Business Analytics Group. So Janice, thank you for being here as well. So there is a great analytics group at SIUE that is sitting, waiting to help you do this. So what are the action items? What are the action items? Well, the first thing, again, I need to go look at what my action items are. Identify your overall goal, okay? So like I said, you actually have an overall goal. So identify that overall goal. What you need to do then is decide on the categories. Decide on the categories that are going to be instrumental to your goal. What are those categories that you know are critical to determining your goal? So for me, it was those students in those green, yellow, orange, red categories. For you, what categories of things are critical for you achieving your goal? If you're concentrating on customers, what are the categories of customers that you want? If you're concentrating on expanding a certain marketing segment, what are the categories there that you need to do? So identify the categories. Only you can do that. Your intuition is going to be critical. So then what you want to do is identify certain measures with respect to those categories. So 3 to 5. It doesn't take a huge amount. What are the things? For me, it was preparation, motivation, and demonstration. But for you, what are the categories you think you can actually measure? So with respect to those categories, what are the things you can measure with respect to those categories? And then figure out what's the relative importance of those categories. When I did preparation, motivation, and demonstration, I said, okay, 25% for preparation, 25% for motivation, 50% for demonstration. Your intuition will tell you the relative importance of the different things you can measure. Then, of course, you need to contact CSPAN. So CPAN is the Center for Predictive Analytics. I'm going to be the business liaison, and I'm looking forward to helping businesses in this area use the data revolution. As Jason said, if you're not already using this, if you're not already doing the kinds of analytics, you may in 10 years be replaced by someone who is. And it doesn't have to be black box. It doesn't have to be something that you're not involved in, because human intuition and your business expertise is absolutely critical to the whole process. And we're here to help at SIUE, both in the School of Business and at the Center for Predictive Analytics. And I look forward to hearing from you and working with you to take advantage of that data revolution. Thanks so much.